It's very nice to see so many of you coming here. And I want to thank you, the colleagues in Iasi, for inviting me, and to say to all of you how beautiful place you have here around the Paratul Culturii, because yesterday evening I spent about an hour walking and clearing my head, and it was just very, very nice and very relaxing, so thank you. I like to say about myself that I'm a true engineer, and I'm proud to be an engineer. And that's not because I have a diploma, but the fact that I take an engineering approach to most of the things that I'm doing. I play a lot with Legos, and probably more than I do now than when I was a kid. And for the past 6 months, all my spare time has gone into assembling and fine-tuning the 3D printer kit I bought, the cheapest I could find, from China. And these are my 2 beautiful daughters. Okay, we will start today by talking about metaphors, because the subject of today for me is a metaphor for software, delivery in particular. Then I'm going to tell you my personal experience that completely changed my life. And we're going to walk through the journey that me and my team went through for the past 2 years and applying the metaphor on it. And at the end, we're going to see exactly what we learned. And I don't have code, so sorry if you came for that. So we already saw from the previous presentation of Victor that software development is similar to civil engineering. And actually, we believe that computer science is an engineering field, right? Everybody? Do you agree with that? Okay. But how many of you, please raise your hand, heard that software development is just like gardening? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, quite a lot. So you start out planning that this is where I'm going to put my vegetables, this is where the flowers will be, this I will put the nice orange roses, the daisies, here I'm going to put the cabbage, the tomatoes, the basil. And after a few weeks, you're happy. You can see something green popping up. And after a few weeks, you realize that there's the nice things that you planted and some weeds, and you have to take those out. And the orange roses that you wanted are actually violet, half, and the other half is red. That the red cabbage, that's the only one type that your daughter eats, is white, and the tomatoes just died. Another metaphor that I heard recently about the architect this time, and Victor also had it in his talk, was that the architect is more like a guide taking his team through the rainforest on a hike. And I don't have the abs on this guy, maybe Victor does. But at the end of the week, most of the time, we're more like this. Yeah? Yeah, there are nice weeks when we're not like this, but most of the time. Another metaphor I heard is that the whole software development team is like a surgical team. Every person with their own expertise, all working in sync and having its place in keeping the patient alive, yeah? Keeping the production system running. But most of my teams would be more like this. Yeah, we're a lot. We're a big team. Okay. But the point of a metaphor is that it captures really, really well a perspective of the complexities of reality. But it completely fails in all the other ones. Yeah? So take my talk with a pinch of salt or sarcasm or disbelief in exactly a similar way. Okay, so I was saying about personal experience. Ever since I know I have high pressure. It started up in high school, and the doctors told my mom that I'm probably in love. And yeah, I kind of was. But somewhere around 25, after a yearly check, I discovered that I really do have high blood pressure. It was 160/100. The blood work results were all over the place, really, really bad. And I realized that I'm in a crisis and I need to do something urgent. And I talked with my cardiologist, and she told me that you need to take this pill in the morning, this pill in the evening, you need to take this very, very strict diet. And I did it for a couple of weeks, and things got to improve, and I got my blood work results in order, not perfect, but better, and the blood pressure under control, and everything was going well. And I started doing regular exercises and going to the gym 2 or 3 times a week. Maybe not the strictest diet as before, but still keeping a lot of attention to what I was working. And at some point, I realized that, okay, this is my life now. It's just the new norm. Yeah? And I continue to take care of that. Now I have 2 daughters. I don't have the time to go to the gym as much as I would like to, and you can see here. But again, in the past 2 months, I'm going regularly, 2 times a week, to the gym, for example. That's just one of the examples. So a couple of months back, I was talking with a colleague who actually had the idea of the title of the talk, and we realized that this could be a general approach. Yeah, you get into a crisis, and you need to take immediate action to fix the problems. Then you fix those, and you start working and improving continuously, but you still need to make sure that you're heading in the right direction. And then you realize that that's your new life. That's the norm. And you continue to do the nice things that you did so far that got you there, and you experiment and try new things. So let's talk about our journey. Meet the client, a large financial institution in the Netherlands operating in the global market. Us, the team, and me with the hair. Usually I cut my hair a couple of times a year, so I do have that big hair. And I also don't have the patience to go through the whole book and just skim through and give everyone my opinions, even if they asked for it or don't. And this is the team leader, and she's really paying attention to everybody, making sure that we're all on sync. But I do have to make this disclaimer. Any resemblance to events or persons that you might recognize is purely coincidental and plain obvious. Okay, so the situation was like this. I was asked to join a project where bad things were happening because we already pushed the delivery a couple of times, and just like this Dilbert, we really had a deadline that we couldn't break anymore. And it was not just because of the technical needs, which were challenging in themselves, and the guys in the other room can help you solve some of them, or most of them, all of them. We had to go from on-premise, from our own data center to Azure with 0 downtime, like really 0. We had to integrate with the enterprise single sign-on, but they couldn't decide which technical solution to pick because the project that was delivering the identity provider for the whole organization was being postponed as well. So we didn't know which one. Because we were dealing with personal data and financial statements, we knew that we had to have security high in our plates and our priorities, and we had to use disk encryption. So this means encryption at rest. Everything on the disk, on the data disk or at OS level is encrypted. And Azure recently supports this as well. Because we were part, or our systems were part of a global rollout, we had to do multi-region deployments. But the really big problem here was that we had to finish everything by the end of the year. And this was just a couple of months away. And this was a very, very hard deadline, not just because it was difficult, but the fact that the data center were going to be closed. So we didn't have a data center to rely on in case we don't do it by that time. Yes, the organization had other data centers, but the cost of moving to another data center were just huge, and we didn't afford that. Okay, and this is a financial institution, and you can imagine that there's lots of red tape around everything. And that means that everybody knows about the things that are going not so well or bad, But the official statement comes in an email after a couple of weeks, and the action points are something to be defined in the next board meeting, which is going to be in a month. Now you can imagine that this was a situation where the team really got frustrated, and some of the people just wanted new challenges. Most of them were still in the company, and we were able to go and, can you help me with that? Do you remember how that was? But others weren't. So the team really lost a lot of know-how. What did he do? Go to war mode. Anyone recognizing the movie? Yes, this is the war room in in Stanley Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove. And our war room, and because we picked the war room, was looking more like this, with a few less Macs. But we went to a room, and that meant that the team could really be isolated. And yes, we had other meetings for other things, but we were going out of the room. And nobody was able to come in the room and say, OK, guys, you need to help me with that. So we had really good focus. We could also draw on the walls and put stickies all over the place, and nobody would come, and not even the cleaning lady. OK, another thing that we employed was the OODA loop, Orient, Observe, Decide, Act, which was defined by Colonel John Boyle of the US Air Forces. And this guy knows about the dogfights, the airplane, jet fighters. He wrote the first manual on dogfights in the world. He was behind the design of the F-16 jet fighter that's so maneuverable that it can stand on its tail. Yeah? So we were looking at using these loops in order to identify where are the things and where are the problems that we would actually solve them and then get to the next. Another mantra that we had was, if we have a problem, we need to put a measure against it. And very nice, thank you, Victor. You also had really nice graphics showing how big the problems were. And if we had actions, we knew if the things that we were doing were effective or not. OK, but all of this meant that we were able to really see the progress of what we were doing. We were able to monitor our work in progress, what was done, what was in progress, what was to do. Even more importantly, we knew what was blocking. And everybody not just raised the blockers, but also called out the owner, so that we knew who to go and pick and bother again and again. Have you done that? Have you done that? Have you done that? But everybody as well was involved in the communication and the discussions that we had with all the stakeholders. That meant that we were completely transparent about our progress, and we really were using the escalations line. So in the moment that something was not moving according to the schedule, we were going to the manager of the manager of the manager and making sure that he was able to push the buttons and make things right. OK, and after a few weeks of working in shadow of the old system, we were live. And just shy of the freeze that was in the organization at the end of the year, and most financial institutions have a freeze somewhere just before the holidays, the winter holidays, we were live. What did we learn? We had a big retrospective with everybody and all the 20 stakeholders and so on. And what did we say that helped us? Hey, the war room really provided a way for us to focus on the problems. Scoping, we were really, really hard on the scope of what we had to deliver. And some of the things, like the multi-region deployment, because it was not going to happen, we made sure that we convinced everybody that it was out. And it was out, and it was going to be delivered in the next one. This year is still not on. Yeah, but they really wanted it back then. And yes, from our part, was that stakeholder management is really important. And indeed, not everybody was actively involved in it, just a few people, and the rest could actually focus on just getting the job done. But stakeholder management really provided the support that we needed within the client organization to move things. Because a lot of times, even if we're a partner of an organization, we're still a supplier. We're still something from the outside, and people have their own things to solve, and you need some escalation lines to actually get them to move. Okay. And after all that, and the retrospective, what do you think happened? Okay. Anybody? Winter holidays. Everyone went for a well-deserved holiday, and the system was still up when we came back. But when I came back, I was faced with this existential question. Do I continue to stay with this team, or go to my next firefighting, or my next project, a new bid that I had to do? And what do you do when you have existential problems, questions that you can't solve yourself? Go to your coach. Mine is not black, he's Hungarian, in Cluj as well, a bit more hair, a bit bigger tummy. But he put a lot of questions to me and didn't answer any of mine. But by the end of the discussion, 2.5 hours during lunch, I said that, okay, I'm going to stick. And I have one guy from the client, we're a mixed team, that at the end of every stand-up, he shouts this: "One team, one dream." So that's how we close the dailies. Nobody else picks up that. Okay, so we went over the crisis, and we went into the, getting fit, getting more in a better shape, getting improved. And we worked with 3 muscle groups. The delivery, particularly the delivery team, the product, and the quality. The delivery. The thing that we learned during that hard time of crisis is that trust is really important. And trust doesn't really just happen in the team. You really need to have promises, and you respect those promises, that you are open about the problems that you are facing, you don't sweeping them under the carpet, and also that you have the courage to challenge when the ideas that are coming to you are not being, you don't see their fit in the overall picture. Of course, we had team buildings, and that really helps. I mean, a lot of help is the drink building, and you can't imagine how important of a catalyst is alcohol in the whole team building process. So just imagine giving Cuica or Palinka, from Cluj, to the Dutch people or to the Americans and the Brazilians. It's just amazing. The relationship completely changes the next morning if they show up at work. Okay, but we were in the cloud, and one of the things that we knew already, but we really continued to work on it, was to automate how we get infrastructure up and running and working for us. We were still coming from the old monolith days, and we had about 3 of them. We could kind of deploy them independently, but we really worked on making sure that we can independently deploy them. It was still, we would release them in packages of 2 or 3, but it was, in terms of installation and deployment, independent. The organization also changed. It's, DevOps and Agile are trendy in organizations now, and that means that this organization also said, we're going to go full DevOps. So these operations people are going to be dumped in your IT department or your IT team, and we're going to call the IT team product teams. So all of a sudden, we were in the middle of the team with 2 operations people. We knew they were nice guys, and now we continue to work together, but now they were part of the same team, the same promises, and we were able to give them Cuica. Okay, the product, another muscle group. What we looked here was that at any moment, we were trying to work on the thing that brings the most value to the business. That's a hard thing to do if you don't have that much insight into the business. Okay, one of the first questions that we had, are we really doing Agile? Yes, we were in the IT department or IT organization, really started doing Scrum, and at that time we were already doing several streams with something like Kanban, still doing ceremonies and everything, but is that really Agile? We are still receiving, so most of the things that we're delivering is to resolve compliance things, like MiFID, like PSD2 and stuff like that. So we were just getting a bunch of big documents, and we had to implement together with the BA and the product owner, but still, it was a big document that landed on our plate. That's not really agile. Plus, the business, the real business, thought that agile meant that you can change your mind at any moment, and you still need to promise on your, to deliver on your promises because you committed, right? That's agile, right? Okay, not really, but yeah, most of the thing we did in this area was just to show the impact and just consult them and show them, okay, this is how we normally do it, this is what's happening, this is the impact of what you're doing, either with the people within the team or asking colleagues like Georgia to come and present for them. Okay, another thing that we did was also kind of undercover agent. We asked a business analyst from our side to help us in shielding the team from all the changes, and he was just an undercover agent to show them how we do requirements. So I was saying that we really didn't know the business really, really well. So we were working for a couple of years already on the system, and we just wanted to view the entire chain. And we were working from time to time with the business during the visits to map out the value chain. And I say here that we define priorities based on it. I'm kind of lying a bit because we have it on the table, but still budgets and politics and who has the biggest mouth most of the time wins. But as a team, it's very, very valuable for us because we are able to be open and to challenge them when we see something that doesn't really, really make sense. Okay, whew, a lot of workout. So the last muscle group was quality. And one of the things that really that grew with us was, okay, we are the ones responsible. We are their partners in delivering the IT system. We know what's best, what's fit. So we're not really doing just craftsmanship for the sake and the beauty of code, but we really need to pay attention and make sure that what we deliver is fit for purpose. I'm the architect, so I started working on the quality attributes. And initially, I went out and created a taxonomy, and I talked with lots of people just to make sure that when I say scalability, modifiability, usability, we all are talking about the same thing. Next, out of those, we picked out a couple of priorities, and on those priorities, we started working on making sure that we can measure where we are and be able to take actions on the tests and the measurements that we had. So an old system, crisis, you can imagine that we cut a lot of corners in the crisis and previous crises, and we had a lot of technical debt. Now, we kind of knew where it was, but since we were mainly delivering compliancy, business was not getting enough functionality on the plate. You can imagine that we couldn't get technical improvements going just like that. So what we did was to start showing where in the business bottlenecks, working on the technical debt could help. And I have to admit, now in every business project, we have a part of improvement and digging out technical debt. We didn't know exactly how the application was used, so we also got this going. We now know which parts of the systems do get usage, and just for example, some internal pages were just going to wipe out because they didn't get usage in the last 6 months. And that's that code weight that we need to take out. Whoa. Okay, but that's all nice. This is all the things that we did. And now this is the new norm. What are we looking next? Well, we are talking with business to see which are their most important KPIs, and to be able to continuously monitor them in the live system. So basically, if we send out daily reports, on each day on the dashboard, we could see how that was going. We've invested a lot in the automation testing, and we have all this already in place. Functional, we still want to cover a bit more. In terms of performance, we cover about half of the functionality. Security, we now have under control within the open source library that we are using. And because we're going to have a big migration for the data warehouse that is behind our system, we have a lot of database automation. But still, for the migration, we want to have full coverage to make sure that we have it for that. We've continuously worked on the pipeline. Security is now part of the build, and we have it at every build. But a lot of times, we're not reanalyzing the results. So it's there, and it doesn't go over the thresholds, but we could improve more on that. Performance is not part of the pipeline. We just trigger it manually, and yes, say when we have a big release, yes, it's still up to date. And we want to make it part of the pipeline. We have most of the things solved, but because of the next one, we know that we have to work more on it. How did we do all this? So we really got good at experimentation, and we want to continue with that. So we make a statement on how things are going to get improved by one of the actions and endeavors that we have. Try to validate it as quick as possible, and if it fails, it fails. We learned how not to do it, and try the next thing. So it took us about 2 years, but making new habits does take time. Do you have an idea how many times you should repeat an action before it becomes a habit? 5? 25? 65. Well, about 80 times before the brain makes a synapse, a direct synapse, or fires a direct synapse, instead of going to all the synapses that are used to argue that you need to take that action, or at least to the British scientists. But one of the things that we really got good at is the fact that we do it by design. So we make sure that the behaviors that we want in the team, we together decide that we're going to make a context and offer support for actually to make it happen. And once we see the behavior, we recognize it, and we give rewards for that. I don't know. With the kids, I'm not using rewards, but that's just parenting. OK. What did we learn? Well, in a crisis, you focus on the immediate problems. You fix the problems to keep the patient alive. After that, you start taking action, and you continue to improve things. But you still need to make sure that the train is going in the right direction and not just going faster and faster in the opposite way. At some point, you realize that that's just how it is, your new life. And you continue to do experiments and to try out new things. You continue to do the good things that got you there, if they're still valid. But just try it. Experiment new ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. We'll go through some questions that we have received. How did you solve the missing know-how issue?
Yeah, that's the one slide I took out this morning. So one of the first things that we did was that we made out some maps. Which are the technical areas, which are the functional areas, and who from the team knew what. Maybe at what level. And then we actively, I was saying proactively in the talk, took action to cover the blank spots and to make sure that, we try to cover everything. At the same time, if you did a knowledge sharing session, we were also leaving something behind, like in the wiki and in the code base. So we have readmes in the code base that generate HTML and put in the wiki, but we also have a lot of know-how that's directly in the wiki.
You compared IT to gardening. What are the extreme meteorological events in IT besides the client?
Earthquakes, that's going to take down a data center, but luckily you have multi-region deployments.
Can you share some tips on how you managed to convince the business to adopt true business agility? It's quite hard in an outsourcing context.
I don't think we got that really covered. I think that consulting really, really helps. So making sure that when you see an opportunity that you go and present and share your know-how and of what things that work and don't work. And just, for me, it always comes down to showing the impact of the things. Probably not going and telling, see, I told you so, but finding a nice way to point out the problems. And yeah, if the organization from the top doesn't want to change, I don't think you're going to change. You need really a lot of support from the top management within the organization that you're trying to change.
How did you build the war room, given that most offices nowadays are open space and there are no walls between people? Do you recommend against open space?
No, I don't recommend against open space, but in crisis, you're going. Yeah. So, for example, when there was a huge data leak, the security breach at Google in China, the war room was a building. Yeah. So it doesn't matter. It's a metaphor for the war room. It doesn't matter how you do it. You make your own space. Now, initially, we all went at the client side and stayed there for about a month. And we had like our own meeting room there. But when we came back, we moved to a new floor, which was a bit smaller, and we were able to make that ours. I've heard stories that you just occupy a meeting room, and you go to IT and ask them to cancel all the requests that they have on the meeting room, and you go and talk with the people so that you do stakeholder management with your friends and colleagues. But you just pick up a room, make your own space. But yeah, open space is really, from my point of view, is really, really good. Sometimes it has disadvantages, but I like working in an open space. I was a manager and had my own office for 3 years. The thing I missed the most was the open space.
What KPIs did you use to track progress?
WIP, blockage, block items, and a few others, but these were the most important ones.
Can you expand a bit on OODA loops? How does the framework look like?
So, I hope I remember it in the right way. So you orient, observe, decide, and act. And then you repeat. And at any moment, you take the feedback from all the things that you are doing and taking into your state. That's in a theoretical way. So basically, we were just, okay, where are we? What's the situation? Try to put a ruler against it. Decide on the next action. Validate what's happening. See the impact, the effects, and try it again. You do that as fast as possible and in parallel with as many things as possible. So it's a theoretical model that you apply constantly in your mind, from my point of view.
Can you share one experiment that failed and one that succeeded?
So the experiment that failed, although at the end we measured it and it was a success, using Docker to bring up WebSphere didn't stick with operations. And yeah, the development team was having an environment from 0 to working in 45 minutes. We stuck with 1 week to making it happen. But that's only because of the framework for operations that still exists at the client organization. Successful one, start using analytics. So that was a quick one to remember.
You have mentioned testing BDD, but also the big requirements document. How were your stories or use cases looking?
So we actually delivered a system where the business analysts that don't have any technical knowledge are able to write cucumber and definitions. But I have to admit that at the current time, only our business analysts and their testers are using it to write the tests, the scenarios. The business analysts on their side at some point started, but that was the BA that went on to face new challenges, and we got a new one. And she doesn't want to yet.
Okay. During your experience, have you ever tried to hold...
Sorry, just another addition. For the functional requests, so not the compliancy ones, we do use BDD. Yeah. But that's like 25% of what we're doing.
Yeah. During your experience, have you ever tried to hold the clients and business just as accountable for their actions as the devs? For example, conflict requirements,
that's how
conflicting requirements.
That's how trust works, right? We try to do it. Of course, we do stakeholder management. So if we don't believe that there's enough trust to really be open and transparent, and if being open and transparent at that level doesn't help, we initially decide internally, okay, we're not going to do it, and then try to validate. But we try to get other around the problem solutions.
Two more questions. How do you track technical debt?
Just, again, using maps and knowing where are the big ones. We also did a couple of investigations on our code base with open source tools and internal tools, and even I did a bit of data science on our code base, and we redo the evaluations from time to time to see the progress. And the guys in Yash, I guess you kind of know about Kronos, so because you build it here. So that's one of the tools that we used.
Okay, and we're going to finish with one metaphor because they were really appreciated. How can you do another one? How would you compare IT to military? Who would be the architect? What about designers, developers, QAs?
Okay, just gonna make it very short, but the person that did ask the question, please come and look for me, and I want to have we can debate more about on it. Last week I was in the Netherlands at the MarkLogic event, and one of the keynote speakers was a U.S. Army, the Dutch Army general that had like a 45-minute talk about the situation in the world and how chaotic it is, and how much how many things are happening, and how big of operating field an army has now than in the past. So in the past, they were just, okay, we have the woods, we had the people, we knew that we had to shoot one another, and that was it. Now you have so many layers, so you need to make sure that you have the supply chain actually going, you have the cyber, the information layer, you have the logistics, so getting things from A to B. Any of these layers can be attacked. So you could fight the war and win without having one soldier. Real sword, like the ones with guns and helmets and everything. So I would not go necessarily in the direction who's the general, but I would go into the context and how those two are similar. But I would not apply the classical army or war in the normal operations, but only in the crisis mode. So just like you go into you have, even in IT, we had firefighters that we know that they're going to be dumped in every problematic situation, and they're going to get the project through. At least I know a couple of in my department that I know that if I take him and I dump him somewhere, within 2 days he's going to start delivering value. And yeah, you can have those guys, but you can't rely only on those kind of situations.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Thank you.